To answer your questions, yes, I did see the new Garfield movie, and yes, I am in fact a Garfield fanatic myself. Obviously, I wasn't alive when the Garfield and Friends show was out and about, but I did watch some episodes on the archived DVDs that were released in the 2000s, and the ones that are now on YouTube. I even dabbled into the 2 live-action movies that you folks give way too much crap to. 20 years already? And of course, I watched the infamous Garfield show that aired on Cartoon Network that has surfaced many memes on the internet. Still can't believe this one single animation error somehow slipped through. When I heard that there was going to be an all-new Garfield movie entirely animated, my inner child wanted to shout in excitement. But then when I found out that the voice actor for the main man, cat himself, was Chris Pratt of all people, I did not know what to say. But that was back in 2021, around the same time they announced that Chris Pratt was also going to be playing as Mario. And things have changed since then, and we've gotten several trailers, including one where it's just baby Garfield and baby Odie riding on a vacuum cleaner for 2.5 minutes straight. And now that the movie's here, all I can say is that the title really lived up to its name, and this is, in fact, a Garfield movie. Though that's far from being a bad thing. Just in case many of you are confused by what I mean with the title of this video, let me start off by saying that what worries me about the movie is mostly not about the movie itself. It's about some of the actions behind the scenes of the movie and what notes some later films might take from this in the future. But let's get my thoughts on the movie out of the way first. So, like with every other movie I go to see at a theater, I saw the Garfield movie twice. First time alone and second time with my sister. For the first time, I remember walking out of the theater happy for the movie and genuinely having a good time. Although, when watching it a second time, I definitely witnessed a bit more flaws. Also, when watching it a second time, that was when I discovered another reason why movie theaters could start kicking the bucket sometime in the future. And that's because of the fact that the other people around in the theater, especially the kids, don't know how to shut the hell up. That may seem like first world problems, but trust me, buddy, it's not. Yeah, I went to go see the movie 2 times while being in 2 separate theaters, and the second time is where it was kinda hard to pay attention because of, well, you know. Alright, enough about that. Let's get into some juicy details regarding the movie's story, because for what it was worth, I had fun with it. I'm honestly hoping there's a sequel, because the story definitely leaves a lot to be desired, and could certainly expand and go for a whole lot more. Something else I noticed is that this movie's plot does share some similarities to the first live-action movie, despite the plot mostly being its own thing. I think that's because this one's about Garfield and Odie getting lost and doing some BS just to get back home. Which is reminiscent of the first movie, except Odie is the one that gets lost, and Garfield gets lost just trying to find him. So the plots are kind of more or less the same, except with many differences that could separate them, but it's not too bad. While there's slightly more ambition in this movie than the OG live-action one, the pacing was kinda all over the place and goes a little too fast for a movie about a slow, obese cat. But I definitely appreciate the huge amount of animal characters we were given in this movie, minus one new human character who was just there to advance the plot forward. Speaking of human characters, interestingly enough, John Arbuckle got sidelined quite a lot in this movie despite being Garfield and Odie's owner. The scenes where he does show up, he's just there to remind you that he's more or less the comedic relief of the movie, which is fitting for him since that was the case for most of his other appearances in the franchise.
Like, you can remove him and the movie works just fine. That's how low the bar has been set for his character.
But part of me kind of wishes that he was given more screen time since this movie gave him this strange redesign for some reason. Even Liz shows up and only has one line in the entire film, which was already shown in the second trailer. So yeah, I could understand if someone did end up forgetting about John, even though it kinda seems like he would have a more of an active role judging from the first trailer. And the beginning scene with him and Garfield at that restaurant.
And from the looks of it, it seems like this movie was expecting for people to already be acquainted with the characters and not do that many introductions. It makes sense because it wouldn't really require much to understand these characters and their habits. While we're on the subject, let's talk about some of the brand new characters that this movie introduces.
The highlight being Victor, Garfield's long-lost father. And for those random people wondering, where's Garfield's mother? Well, she made her debut in the Garfield on the Town TV special back in 1983 and hasn't been seen since then, I believe. Anyway, I'm guessing we were supposed to view Vic as the worst father of the year, judging by how Garfield just tosses him around throughout the whole movie until the climax of it.
But, as you'd expect, it's just like the old saying where you can't judge a book by its cover. At least, that's what I think. Vic may have seemed like an asshole, but just how every other movie or show does this story, he only acted the way that he did just to keep his son safe. The reason he was meant to be thought of like an asshole was because it's told not only has he betrayed his son, but more importantly that this even fatter cat known as Jinx, who used to date him, just wants to get back with him and asks him to get like these cups of milk that they were stealing a while back from a place called Lactose Farms. Yeah, pretty wild and cumbersome synopsis, I know, but that's the way you want it. But it turns out what she's really doing is plotting her revenge against Vic for abandoning him many years back. I just personally found it funny how throughout their journey, Garfield talks down to Vic for neglecting his own son, and he just talks mad shit around him. But the real reason why Vic left Garfield was simply because he was just getting some fish, but Garfield was bribed by seeing John in some restaurant, and then Vic just saw him there and decided to just let him enjoy his new life. So yeah, Vic wasn't exactly a bad guy. Even though for once Garfield's anger was actually justified, but it's explained that Vic just wanted the best for his son. Although I didn't really understand why Garfield and even Odie needed to tag along into Vic's journey. In the end, Jinx not actually wanting to get back together with Vic, but instead wanting to seek revenge was way too predictable. Her face expressions really just gave it away. We don't even know if Vic even wanted to make amends with her, but you can't exactly blame him for not wanting to accept that offer. The second trailer already highlighted that Jinx was going to be the main villain, so it just fed ammunition to the point of trailers showing way too much nowadays. So yeah, since Jinx turning on Vic was mighty predictable thanks to them just leaving it out in the open, Garfield was sadly forced against his will to go on this adventure. Almost makes you feel bad for him, especially since these two bozos were stalking the three throughout the whole movie. Plus, that dog keeps reminding me of the dog from Coco, probably because they act the same. But she did get her karma at the end of the movie, so all is well after all. By the way, they definitely made sure that they've gotten Garfield's personality right by him saying stuff like, "You lost the privilege of telling me what to do a long time ago," and when he says, "You may call me Garfield," or Mr. Garfield, or G-Dog. Also, am I the only one who finds it weird that Odie is given a voice actor each time despite him not ever talking in the first place? Better yet, why doesn't he talk, but every other animal in this world does? Another small issue I have with this movie is the absurd amount of pop culture references there are. You got Olive Garden, Walmart, FedEx, they're all over the place, I tell ya. And of course, like every other pop culture reference in a movie or TV show, it serves little to no purpose and is just there to be like, wow, we referenced the thing, now go eat a lasagna at Olive Garden or something. Even my sister didn't find all of the pop culture references enjoyable. Good lord, it had me thinking that I was watching an hour-and-a-half long ad, even though we already do that on YouTube these days. And my thing with movies is that when the trailer comes out, I would usually watch it like 5 or 10 minutes on the day it released, and never again until the movie comes out, so I could go in slightly blind without knowing what to expect as much. But when watching the movie, I couldn't help but notice that I was watching the scenes that were already shown in the trailers way too many times without rewatching them as much. So I think I would have appreciated the scenes a way lot more than I already did if the trailer didn't spoil most of them. That's the problem with trailers for movies nowadays and video games, showing way more footage of the product than necessary. Just like I mentioned earlier. So overall, I'd say this movie certainly got the gist, atmosphere, tone, and story correct for a Garfield movie. So, as the generous supporter of a franchise as old but grand as this, I'll happily reward this movie with a 7.5 out of 10 and a B rank. Yeah, it's no masterpiece and far from the best movie ever, but I enjoyed the movie for what it was. If you're a Garfield fan, or if you're just wondering if this movie is worth seeing, I'd say give it a chance and look at it for what it is, and you might just enjoy yourself with it. Alright, now that my review is out there, it's time for me to get into the topic that I'm more serious and interested in speaking of. Mostly the disastrous things this film may cause with other movies we'll get later down the line. And that's the fact that people nowadays seem to be way too quick to judge and feel the need to be critical with every new movie, whether animated or live action. With movies like Spider-Verse and Mutant Mayhem, it shows that movies can definitely reach the highest of quality by this point, but just because movies like those attracted the attention of many others, doesn't exactly mean that the movies nowadays should always have the same kind of quality and effort. I mean, look at Barbie. From the looks of it, the movie had a whole lot of budget towards it and went all over the place and ended up going nowhere in the end because the movie looked like a failure to me, but somehow Rotten Tomatoes thought it was grander than the Mario movie. Yeah, I'm still not getting that. Not to drag Rotten Tomatoes into this because their history speaks for itself and people already know how bullshit their takes on movies are.
But after watching the Garfield movie and seeing the internet's opinions on it tells a lot on why movies should be judged and praised for what they are, not what they aren't these days. Just like what IGN used to do in the late 2000s with Sonic games, saying they were bad simply because of 06 being a failure. One freaking game! More importantly, I feel that can be said for anyone these days, like people always expecting way too much when going to see a movie. I mean, yeah, movies and video games have come a long way since the early days. You can be sure of that. The problem I have is that people are most likely going to judge movies for what they aren't nowadays, which doesn't need to be the case, I can tell you that much. Like, if you were really expecting something groundbreaking from a Garfield movie of all things, then that just further proves why people like them don't know how to keep their own expectations in check. And that's pretty pathetic. Not everything has to be for me, or for you. Garfield's obviously a franchise catered to children, but of course there's always people like me that'll find enjoyment in it. So don't go around saying that this PG-rated movie for kids and folks who grew up on Garfield like me is an insult to animation because of whatever your eyes are used to seeing in much bigger movies like Avengers and whatnot. Like, I understand the movie wasn't anything groundbreaking, but it's Garfield. Like, what the hell could you possibly expect from a movie about a fat, lazy orange tabby cat that hates Mondays, eats lasagna, and acts like a jerk to everyone? I thought it was a decent enough movie, and it got several laughs out of me and everyone else in the theater who was watching with me. I mean, would you rather have a movie that does the franchise it's based on justice, or a movie that's so bad that it's an insult to the original source material and fans that support said material? I'm just shocked that Sony actually managed to make this movie work out in the end, even though they're known for making a lot of bad animated movies. Smurfs! Another thing that concerns me about the future for animated movies and such is that companies will be way too focused on choosing random popular celebrities to fill in the roles of certain characters. Not a lot of people went as crazy for the decision of Chris Pratt playing as Garfield as much as they did for Mario, but it's understandable why people would be upset about this as well. Seriously, why does Chris Pratt keep invading my favorite franchises? Good lord, I'm just imagining him playing as Sonic or SpongeBob. If anything, I feel it would be more appropriate to just let other celebrities take a crack at voicing these characters, mostly ones that aren't as high as the bigger ones. Let them have a chance, because the big-named celebs were in their shoes at some point. Plus, this could actually lead to false advertising as well, which is never a good thing. Like, in one of the trailers for Garfield, they made a big deal that Snoop Dogg was gonna have a role in the movie, but looking at it now, he only had like 2 or 3 lines for one scene, and that marked the end of his role. You shouldn't really rely on those kind of things for your movie to create hype, only to have them serve little to no purpose in the movie itself. That's why I feel like hiring big-name celebrities tend to be hit and miss, but mostly miss. But apparently that's the way most companies that work with Hollywood see it, I suppose. Hiring big-name celebrities so that the theater is filled to the brim with adults that appreciate the actors' talents. That's not to say it's always a bad thing, because just like with Mario, Chris Pratt actually shocked me with how well he handled Garfield's voice in the movie. He's no Lorenzo Music or Frank Welker, but for a movie like this, it works fairly well. At least he had a fun time playing as Garfield from the looks of it, unlike Bill Murray, who voiced Garfield in these 2 live-action movies and regretted every single minute of it. Although him not liking lasagna was completely out of character, just gonna throw that out there. I don't even know why they couldn't have just gotten Frank Welker, since he's still active these days, but Chris Pratt was overall decent enough. But what I want to know is, how can you call this movie an insult to animation when Wish is right there? At least the Garfield movie is doing spectacular in the box office, which is more than I can say for any movie Disney has made recently. Even if a movie had high budget, we can't exactly ignore the flaws either for those kind of things. Even high budget movies have their own problems. At least Sony was confident with the Garfield movie, because just look at all the marketing they've done for the movie. I mean, come on, a Garfield popcorn bucket? What can be better than that? Speaking of which, there is a post-credit comic strip, not seen, where it feels like it's teasing a sequel for the movie, which I'm hoping is not just a gag, because, like I said, they can definitely expand a whole lot more with this story. So what I want people to learn from this video is pretty simple. Don't praise or criticize movies for what they're not. Not everything has to be groundbreaking, and let other VAs get their time to shine. That's all I ask. Anyway, that'll be it from me, so thank you guys for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and have a nice day.